Okay, call meeting to order on the special and regular meeting with the board of directors for the Water Management District. Call the roll, please.
Director Anderson. Director Edwards.
Here.
Director Lindor. Here. Director Paul. Here. Director Daniels has not yet arrived. Vice Chair Oglesby has not yet arrived. Chair Riley.
Here.
I'm sorry. No, is this sweet? Joe Michael? No.
Yeah.
No.
Yes, it is.
George. Yes, it is. Joe Michael?
Yeah.
Because that, speaking.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Yes, we have 5 members present.
Okay, are there any additions and corrections to the closed session agenda? None? Okay, are there any public comments on the closed session?
No members of the public are present.
And if there's nobody on,
And there's no one on Zoom.
okay. Well, what's next? Read us into closed session? Or do we close the public meeting and?
We can go ahead and close the public meeting and start our discussion.
Yeah, 3 items on the agenda.
I will lock the meeting.
Call meeting order of the Water Management District on May the
What,
19th.
excuse me, let me get the recording started.
Okay,
Recording in progress.
okay, roll call please for the regular agenda.
Director Anderson? Here. Director Daniels? Here. Director Edwards?
Here.
Director Lindor? Here. Director Paul? Here. Vice Chair Oglesby?
Here.
Chair Riley?
Here.
All members are present.
Stand for the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, next item, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
There are none.
I think
What-
there's a correction.
There is a correction to item 12 that it was distributed, and I think you have it in your red folders as well. And it has been posted to the website.
Okay, thank you for that. Any oral communications? Anyone wants to speak to the board on an item not on the agenda? And we'll go to Zoom people second. So anyone in the room? None? Anyone on Zoom?
Chair Riley, I see no raised hands.
Okay, back to the board. First item on the agenda is item one, the consent calendar, item number one. I'm not sure you want to just lead these through as we go. Anyway, so item one is the adoption of the minutes for April the 11th. Any comments from me? I'm sorry, the 21st, April 22nd, 21st. Any comments, any suggestions, any corrections from the board members?
Isn't that part of the entire consent calendar?
Well, we might consider that.
Somebody moves it.
Well, yeah, let's just quickly go through our case. So we have 12 items on the consent calendar. Many of them are contracts that are due for renewals. Many are just typical reports we do every meeting. There are a couple items that are about summer special programs. And some contracts that are just ongoing contracts, as I said. And a couple of financial reports that are pretty standard that we hear periodically. And so question is, can we take them all at once? Is there anybody that would like to pull an item?
6, 7, and 8. Thank you.
Okay, I'm glad.
Just comments on them.
6, 7, and 8. And anyone else wanting to pull an item? Okay, we'll come back to those three items. So I then turn a motion for the consent calendar without items 6, 7, and 8. There a
So
motion?
moved, Chair.
Okay,
I'll second it.
second. Moved and seconded, all items except the three we identified. Let's see, are there any comments? Zoom, obviously. And
I see no raised hands.
okay, back to the board. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, anyone opposed, any abstention? Okay, that part passes now. Director Edwards, you're on item 6, 7, 8.
6, 7, 8.
Any other board members that have any comments on those items?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank the general manager for holding the line on these contracts. Listen to the administrative committee. I know Director Linder spoke about on Wellman, how good of a job he's been doing. I know our supervisor, Daniels, have little concerns about our state and federal about looking at these. But I want to first just thank the GM, and I also like to say to the GM and staff that I like these contracts to go through the committee. We just had public outreach last month, but we missed his contract. Outreach comment from Wellman Ads. He's been doing an outstanding job. I'm glad Director Linder spoke of that. I wish we could have gave him something to add on for the future to get going. So, I would just like for these contracts to go in front of each committee so they can discuss it and we can listen to that discussion about, I'm worried about the state and I'm worried about federal paying this kind of money out and nothing happening. Nothing, especially at the federal level. I don't know what the 3.5 years gonna bring us, but should we cut back a little bit? Or let them know. I know the GM talk to them regularly. But that's my concern over all three of these basically, but I know Wellman Public Outreach is really doing good. I like that. And, I'm not pushing the raise on him or anything, but the GM, said it for everybody. So I'm glad he did. So I move approval. If any other comments on all three of these.
Yeah, I think his point is we went to all three consultants and in advance and said, will you hold your fees to last year's level?
And if I
Given
could
our
just-
situation with respect to the taxpayers' lawsuit, so.
And I'll second the motion, but mainly because the admin, finance and admin committee met and covered all three items, and very much your point about the two lobbying agreements. There was quite a discussion about how to go forward. We've had them for a while. Maybe it's time to relook at some other options that are available. Maybe.
Speaking of, I'm sorry.
No,
Of
the
the
federal-
Sacramento and federal legislative consultants, so that
It-
JEA is Sacramento and Ferguson Group is federal.
I keep them right. Ferguson is for federal. I put the two F's together.
There you Good mnemonic. Yeah.
But and there was general agreement that, yeah, maybe it's time to kind of look a little harder at some of those agreements and what we're getting for what we're paying, and maybe there's a way to even split the contract into a couple of components. One's more flexible, one's more just traditional. Anyway, I just wanted to add that we had a pretty good discussion.
Right.
Kate was there.
Just to elaborate, Chair, one of the things that we talked about was a lot of the basic things that we get from them is stuff that they're providing to every single entity that they're in contract with, if it's a report on bills and things like that. And so we were just sort of asking, I think, some good questions of ways to perhaps make sure that when we're renewing the contract, there's some awareness there that we're looking for something very specific. And what are we getting for this big investment?
You explained that to me because I wasn't at that meeting, of course, but I was gonna ask the same question, so.
Well, good. We'll hear about this the next time around, for sure. So on the motion to approve all three that were pulled, 6, 7, and 8, all in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Yes, I should say, I mean, the abstention, I should ask that. I should take that lesson from the mayor here. Okay, down to item number 13, the journal manager's report.
And it's limited solely to the compliance reporting, and it's mid-water year, so there's not a whole lot, so it should be relatively quick. Sarah, if you get the chance. Pop it up. Great, next page. On the river, you can see that budget and target, or target versus actual, is getting fairly close in all categories here in the Monterey Peninsula Water Resource System. But the river right is 3,000, 3376, 3,376, which means there's still close to 1,800 acre feet left that Callahan has not accessed off the river. And that'll require roughly 359 acre feet per month if it were equal every month, which it won't be. So we'll be watching again. We've had this issue now for 2 years where we really want them to come close. We don't want them to be so close that they're at risk of exceeding the legal limit on the river. But that is among the two cheapest sources, Seaside Basin being the least expensive water and the Carmel River being the second least expensive water. So we'll be continuing to watch that. Next slide, please, Sarah. You can see to date, ASR recovery remains zero, even though we've got about 4,400 acre feet in storage. And then on pure water Monterey, the 2034 can be compared to 2306 that's actually been delivered. So they're still lagging a little bit, having left water in the ground, which we know they'll catch up on by June 30th. And then table 13, we did have in April another 20 acre feet allocated to that. So you typically only see table 13 being filled out in a wet year. We'll see in a second that it's really not a wet year, but they were successful at getting some table 13. Yes.
What's the ASR? What's in storage from ASR on this?
Right now it's at 4,392 acre feet. Then we also have almost 2,200 acre feet in the pure water Monterey storage. So all in, we have in storage about 70% of an annual water demand, which is good. That's a nice position to be in. Sand City, there was a question recently, how they doing? They did very well last month at 23 acre feet, and they did 0 in this report. So, well, this actually is reporting last month, but last month's report indicated the prior month at 23 acre feet. So it's continuing to be good, then off, and then good, and then off. So we'll continue to monitor that one.
Dave, can I ask you a question on that one?
Yeah.
Since ASR recovery on all the reports shows a 0 target, when do we expect to use ASR, or are we always just banking it?
No, we expect. So the way ASR works, if you look at the 59-year average, you should be able to deposit water in wet years, and then you need to
Take it in
take
dry
it from, from storage in dry years. And that average should be about 1,210 acre feet.
But we don't
So-
predict because we won't know it's a dry year, right? Is that what this target?
And
0 is?
it's become now kind of a drought reserve. So if we were in drought, we would hit it. And it's also become kind of a future use. So when the proposed decision in the phase 2 proceeding came out, they assigned firm amounts to all the different supply sources. And as a result, the total available supply today exceeds total demand. And so in a normal year, you don't need to hit storage. And so that's kind of the thinking is in an abnormal year, meaning excessively dry, then let's consider hitting the stored water. Or some future year when the surpluses start getting narrower and narrower and narrower, then we're going to want to rely on the average yield. But right now, yeah, it's kind of, if you're predicting a dry year, or if like in the 2013 to 16 year period, if you're in a 4-year drought, you're going to begin to eyeball that. But what happened was the National Marine Fisheries Service, when pure water Monterey came online and allowed the Carmel River pumping to get below the legal limit, or at or below, the stress on the river lessened. And so the incentives to store it in the winter and use it in the same water year in the summer went away. And so now the pressure on our quarterly water budget to put it in December and take it out in July and August, the pressure's off.
Did
So-
we predict that? I mean, that's really good news.
Yeah, it was predicted that we could eventually move ASR to more of a drought reserve than an in-year winter to summer resource,
More wet years than dry.
and more in wet years than dry.
I mean, talking about the 59-year average, it's just more wet years than dry.
And actually there are, it's more than half are normal to wet. And so, the goal is to take real advantage of a very wet year, because it could put 2 years worth of storage in. So just,
And I just throwing some, and that's the discussion we should be having about how do we help communities store more before we have to release the very wet years back into the
Yeah.
bay. Just to put a pin in it for future discussion.
What cities could do.
Well, yeah, but I would like the district to get us together. Yes.
Good point.
Next slide, Sarah. This is production for customer service, which is the proxy for demand of the system. Just suffice to say, we're 7 months through, 5 to go, so it's kind of inconclusive, but we're 182 acre feet ahead of last year. And remember, last year was the first year in about 50 years where total demand on the peninsula dipped below 9,000 acre feet per year. So that may have been a one-off 1 year luxury, and we'll be back up over 9,000 this year based on this data, but 5 months ago, never know. Next slide, please. On the rainfall front, we're at 81% of long-term average. And next slide, please. And this is also rainfall. The red line is the cumulative. We're pretty much stuck at 16.56 inches. And the cutoff for being a normal year is 17.04 inches. So we're going to be a below normal year, suffice to say, by a half an inch.
And apparently I heard that was a good thing
Still a good thing.
in terms of like what gets triggered with the fish in a normal year versus.
Yeah, it turned
abnormal
out,
year.
Yeah, we were actually able to squeeze out a little more ASR. It's counterintuitive, but in a drier situation, you actually get more flexible criteria. So we got a little more than we might have. On stream flow, next slide. You can see that the last 3 months have been tracking at below long-term average. And we're at 49% of overall long-term average. And with the remaining months that are out there, even if we were at 100%, the full red bar, which we're not going to be, we're going to be 50 to 60% of those.
Yeah.
So that range is not enough to get us into normal. So we're definitely finishing below normal, which is what it is. So.
I notice just living right on the river that it's much lower than what we've had these last several years this time of year.
Yeah, we had a little conversation about the differences between the Carmel and Rock Creek in Washington, D.C. this week. Still okay to swim in the Carmel.
Mr. Chair, Dave, let's go back to the river again.
Yeah.
How long can Cal-Am pump off that river during the year? Is it a shut off time or?
No, it's a year-round water right. The preference of the fish regulators would be less pumping in the summer, more pumping in the winter. Of course, demand is dampened in the winter because irrigation,
Right.
irrigation. On paper, you could move time of year around, but there's no restrictions.
Okay, there's no restriction. Should we send them a letter and say, use the river more, more? If they can use it throughout the year, they should be on it throughout the year.
Well,
And we need to enforce that. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, the message got delivered by our board 2 years ago, pretty clearly. So as we look at this right now, there's no cause for alarm. They're working the river. I mean,
Okay,
go back to
I'm
this one
just
slide.
saying, you said they might not, and
It's a lot left, but you can
Well-
see in April, they jumped up from 42 acre feet in March up the Carmel River to 319. So
okay,
they're getting into the range we want them to be in.
give them a phone call.
Yes.
Say we own it, call them or do something that direct there, put my name, direct there, we're looking at you.
Yep.
And you know he'd like to mess with you. So tell him.
Will do. We got it. And that concludes the
Yeah.
report.
Thank you.
Okay, on to the next item, district council report.
Community boards, staff, and our member of the public. We're at, item 14, there's my written report, you at page 75 report packet. And I will, as I go through this, read in the actions of the section. The first item worthy of discussion is the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayer Association cases. This is a series of separate actions that were brought by MPTA, the Taxpayer Association, over a period of years that challenged various aspects of the district's water supply charge. And we are in the final steps of settlement. There's notice of entry of dismissal has been entered for most of the cases on May 2nd. The final settlement of the remaining cases requires approval of the court. That is in process, and we see no indication that it will not be approved by the court. Once that final approval is entered, then we'll be able to enter judgment on the grounds that have been negotiated. So what has been negotiated, you ask? That the district will create a settlement fund of $3,355,000 roughly from the water supply proceeds, and the fund is used to pay attorney's fees.
Long way down.
One of those days.
That fund will be used to pay attorney's fees, to pay the administrative costs to effect the refund, and to distribute the remainder to the ratepayers. Refund checks have to be cashed within 1 year of receipt. And if not, then the monies will be recouped and then paid into the CalAm Hardship Benefit Program, which is a program controlled by the United Way. And it's the purpose of the program is to reduce burdens on CalAm ratepayers that are facing impending water shutoffs. So the other aspect of the settlement is that the district has agreed that it will forbear or not proceed in any way with respect to imposing, levying, or collecting a new Prop 218 set of fees that did not exist as of February of this year, and that forbearance would be through June 30th of next year, 2026. So this is very likely to be the last time I report on these cases. If I do, it's because something happened that we're not anticipating. Want to report to you on the,
Well, before you leave that one, when do you put a period after the end of this process? When does the process end?
well, we will certainly advise you, but I'm not going to be making a public report of this unless it's necessary. But we anticipate that the settlement will be approved and a final judgment entered. So,
This year?
in
Okay,
June,
I'm just-
Shortly.
just
In June.
give me a sense of time.
Yeah,
that's all.
yeah,
In June.
in June.
But the actual execution of the whole process is going to be a year.
No, I understand. It'll be-
Yeah.
And the year end date is what? What happened? Everybody got, all the checks were sent out?
Not yet.
No, I'm talking
Yeah.
about the
Yeah,
year end is what?
Yeah, so it's, I don't know, Nichelle, when does it open? Like 15 days from the settlement?
Yeah, there are like well-defined criteria. So I think when like it's the second or third milestone after which we'll send the checks out and then the 1 year clock begins. It's a pretty detailed criteria, I think, which is part of the second.
So it'll be a year from probably sometime in July. If,
Right, I thought what the chair was getting to is the end date is that year. And I'm suggesting is that year when, you know, we did all we did with the checks and then whatever money is left goes to United Way.
Yeah.
And then we don't need to really worry about
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And so the checks will go out within probably 45 days of the agreement being approved by the courts. And then we have to give people time to say, hey, I didn't never get a check. We did structure it so we don't have to chase down, most banks aren't going to cash a check after 180 days. And our concern was the plaintiff wanted a full year. And we're like, well, we're not going to track down everybody who didn't cash their check. And they agreed, but there's still that room for somebody to say, I was part of the class and I didn't see my check. So there
But
was-
on that, they would not have to request a check. What I'm hearing is you're gonna send them out there and automatically send everybody a check.
So
That-
the class is owners of record in a 2-year period when, which was covered by the class claim. So when they started this, there was no claim for any damages. They just wanted the charge sunset. And then they also did reverse validation proceedings in every year while it was going on to protect their interests in making a reverse validation claim. Then they filed a claim for damages that would kind of backdate itself to the prior fiscal year. So the class members, so to speak, would be anybody who owned property that was subject to the charge in that fiscal year and then the then current fiscal year. And then we canceled it for the current fiscal year. So it's just 2 fiscal years that were at play. But it's only 1 year's worth of dollars minus legal fees, minus the
Yeah, I understand
defendant's
that. I just want the
out-of-pocket, so-
public to know the district will send them a check.
Yeah,
that's
They
correct.
don't have to request a check.
That's correct.
And that way I, look at my mailbox and then come down here and say, I ain't got my check yet.
If you deserve a check.
Oh, okay, that's a good point, because everybody will not receive a check.
There's a great point that just got raised in there kind of in jest, but the point I want to make is we don't get to keep it. So you couldn't say, I'm out of the goodness of my heart, I'm not cashing my check. Your choice is you don't cash it. The balance of uncashed checks goes up. And the check we write to the United Way goes up. So it's
Okay.
not like, You-
We getting the money back.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Loretta.
Thank you. Going on to the next item of pending litigation, and that is the Water Management District's lawsuit against Cal-Am. This is the district's effort to fulfill the electoral mandate of Measure J that directed the district to pursue if feasible the acquisition of and ownership and operation of Cal-Am's water supply facilities by eminent domain. We have a new judge, Judge Ian Rivolante, who has now been appointed to preside over Department 13A. And it appears that he will be assigned to this case in the place of Judge Vanessa Vallarta. I cannot tell you why that occurred. That all is in the black box of the Superior Court's proceedings. But that is the judge that already has had hands-on in terms of the last case management conference. The parties have agreed that the case needs to be bifurcated. There's a phase that goes before the judge only, and that's the right to take, and which is a question of law, and that's adjudicated before the judge as part of what they call a bench trial. If the district has the right to take, then there's a second phase, and that's the just compensation phase. That is the question that would be decided by a jury, and that is what is the value that should be paid to Cal-Am for its facilities. That's the one that is much more fact intense in terms of the proceeding that will go to the jury, and that will be sequential if we get that to that point.
Just procedural, that jury trial also Monterey Superior Court?
Yes, that will be. The opportunity to seek a change in venue has lapsed. So we know that the matter will be tried in Monterey, and it will be a Monterey jury if we get to that phase. Importantly, in April, the California Supreme Court did grant a petition to review a case of Town of Apple Valley versus Apple Valley Ranchos Water, which is a eminent domain proceeding by which a public entity sought to acquire public utility property. The question in that case is, what is the standard of review? The existing law upon which the Apple Valley case was based had a standard of review that was more deferential to public agencies. I'm sorry, to public utilities. And it would have made a more difficult position for the district to overcome. We don't know what the Supreme Court will do, but the Supreme Court has taken that case for review and is going to decide that matter. And it will directly impact how the Superior Court will review the facts in our case.
Can you give us any examples of what the standard of review, what does that cover?
Well, how much deference should be given to a public agency? Is it entirely, can the court second guess? Does the court have de novo review, brand new review? Or is it deferential? Should it overturn the public agency's decision through its findings and declarations when it decided to proceed? Should it be giving deference to the public agency's decision? We're used to that type of review. That's the review that we've dealt with respect to the Coastal Commission when it decided. That's the position when someone wants to attack a decision of this agency. This agency did make findings of fact and conclusions of law with respect to its a resolution of necessity, saying why the district needed to proceed. So the question is, how much deference, if any, should the court give to the conclusions that this district made? Stay tuned. We don't know yet.
Is there an opportunity for the district to participate in the future?
The district
review?
has an opportunity, as does anyone, to file an amicus brief. But the time to do so is not yet here. We will, that opportunity would come after we actually see what those briefs look like.
Okay.
The CalAm in our case has suggested that it may file a motion to order a stay in this action to allow the Supreme Court to clarify the law. Whether or not they would seek an entire stay of all proceedings, or perhaps just to minimize the type of discovery that should be ongoing, we won't know until we see CalAm's motion. CalAm has said to the court that it does plan to file a motion. They have told us that they plan to file a motion, but we don't know how far ranging that motion will be. Our perspective is that certainly there are some aspects of the case that probably should not go before the court until we know what the Apple Valley decision has said. But there are many aspects, because as this is a very large endeavor, we need facts. We need facts to build our models as to what CalAm's, the scope of their holdings are, evaluation of their holdings. And there's a lot that should go on in our point of view. But I don't know, we don't know yet until we see what CalAm is going to be filing. CalAm has told the court that they plan to file a motion for summary judgment. Their arguments are that the district is not authorized to acquire CalAm's property. They're saying the district is not legally authorized to provide retail water service, and that the district requires approval from LAFCO. We know that the LAFCO question has not yet been fully and finally resolved, because that itself is on appeal. It is likely that the district would seek the opportunity to file a cross motion to resolve some of these items in favor of the district. We anticipate that CalAm will file its motion sometime this month. And then the district will have an opportunity to respond to that motion. We are anticipating that there will be a hearing on the motion sometime late summer. And by that, I mean sometime in August, September, or October. I know October's not summer, but it just greatly depends on the court schedule. So that's where we are. at this point. On the other aspect, the LAFCO's review of the district's authority to acquire CalAm. That matter is on appeal to the 6th District Court of Appeal. Appellants, opening briefs, appellants are LAFCO and CalAm have been filed as of May 22nd. We are now on the clock in terms of filing our responsive brief. CalAm and the Coastal Commission asked for extensions of time. They extended almost by 6 months how long it took for them to prepare their briefs. We will be asking for additional time as well so that we can respond and do it in a thorough and appropriate fashion. Looking at the matter of the city of Marina, the district, Marina Coast Water District against the Coastal Commission. This is the lawsuit that challenged the Coastal Commission's issuance of a coastal development permit to CalAm for its proposed desal project. This is the topic that we did as a board discuss both on May 21st, I'm sorry, April 21st, and earlier tonight. When we last reported to you, the judge had issued a tentative decision that favored Coastal Commission in its authorization of the desal permit. The district and other petitioners filed 48 objections to the decision and sought modification. And the court has now modified its decision slightly, but without substantive effect. So that is now a final decision that has not actually been signed by the judge. It is being prepared. We anticipate that that'll be available in the next week or two. And once that is signed, then that can be appealed by the parties. This board did consider both in April and again earlier tonight its position on whether or not an appeal should proceed. No action was taken. That continues to be reviewed until we decide, see exactly how the final order is written and consult with other parties as well. Moving on to the pending Public Utilities Commission matter on the Pure Water Monterey. That matter has been divided into different phases. Phase 1 had already been completed. The hearings on phase 2 were completed in the hearings were in March of 2024. Matter was briefed, and we just did receive a proposed decision on Friday, March 9th. I'm sorry, thank you, May 9th. And the way the Public Utilities Commission system works, an ALJ, administrative law judge, does draft a decision that if it will finally be considered by the full 5 voting commissioners that who may modify it, they have the ability to submit an alternate decision. But eventually a decision will be voted upon, and that will be the final position of the commission. There's an opportunity to comment on the proposed decision. And this board in closed session did consider that, and it did approve, this board, your board, did approve on a motion by Director Paul, second by Director Edwards, to recommend that and direct staff and council to file comments and reply comments to the commission on the proposed decision, and to conduct ex parte meetings with commissioners and advisors to enunciate what the district's reasoning is. And that motion was adopted on a unanimous vote, 7-0. All members being present.
Mr. Laredo,
Yes, sir.
after that, where can we go for the public to know? Is
Well-
there any place to go, Supreme Court, or are we done?
Well, to begin with, whatever the proposed decision is, will go to the full commission. That will be at a notice public meeting. Public testimony is received, not by any of the parties, but the members of the public can write and communicate their perspective. And sometimes can speak for short periods of time. When that's all said and done, the commission will vote to approve, modify, reject, or approve the decision, and a final decision made. That decision then is final. The only means to challenge that is a petition directly to the California Supreme Court. There is no stepping in an intermediate stage to the Court of Appeal.
Thank you.
The only other item of pending litigation that has had any traction since the last report is the district's lawsuit against the State Water Resources Control Board. This is challenging the state board's issuance of the cease and desist order. This is a legacy case in the sense that this matter was filed in the year 2010. And that challenge was to the CDO as then issued by the state board. There were multiple causes of action. It was filed in Monterey County. It was transferred to Santa Clara County. The parties postponed prosecution of the case because the PUC, Public Utilities Commission, had taken CalAm's application for its Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project. And the parties stipulated that this action should be put on hold. It was a tolling action. And no further action has been taken on that since 2010. And quite frankly, the issues that are raised there are somewhat stale. The other parties that were included in that action were some of the cities, certainly CalAm, the district, State Water Resource Control Board, also the Sierra Club and Carmel River Steelhead Association were parties. Because no action has been taken, the Sierra Club and Carmel River Steelhead Association has filed notice of their intent to dismiss this action. And the question would be, does this case have any continuing value to the district or to anyone, quite frankly, at this point? The motion to dismiss will be heard in the Santa Clara County Superior Court in November. But it's not certain that any party will be opposing that motion. Even if that motion is granted or if the case is dismissed, then there will be a question as to whether or not attorney's fees are valid to be claimed by any party. We know that the Sierra Club has made clear its intent to seek attorney's fees. The district would have an opportunity, if we are to otherwise ask to pay attorney's fees, the district would have an opportunity to defend against that, should it choose to. The question then says, well, what happens about the CDO? Are there circumstances that the district might choose to contest the CDO and how it's being implemented? And the answer to that is still viable. That would be a present decision of the State Water Resources Control Board to impose and enforce the CDO or to modify the CDO. And the district would have an opportunity to raise points as to how its implementation affects the district and whether or not it's being fairly implemented. That would still be available to the district. So the point being is that a decision has to be made by the parties as to whether or not that original 2010 case has any validity. Mr. Chairman?
And just to clarify, that was also one of the cases that was discussed in closed session, and there was no action taken.
Yeah, that's correct. that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
I will bid
Comments
you.
from the board?
Oh,
No. Go ahead.
I have what is probably a very naive question. And it's, it's about definitions, partly. But I read that, are we a municipal water system?
Hmm,
We are. We are not formed as a municipal water district. But the provision of municipal water is a type of water right in California water law. And so we do provide municipal water.
Okay, so now I'll continue. What I read was that a municipal water system is an organization that provides drinking water to at least 5 service connections, or regularly serves 25 individuals for 60 days.
Yeah, so there's a term of art called public water system. Which has a similar, it's 15 connections. Not 5, but we are an urban water wholesaler at this point. So we by state definition, we are an urban water supplier, but we're an indirect supplier, but we are not currently a public water system. With this caveat, we actually are now by definition under the state's health and safety code. We're currently in the process of trying to get the Division of Drinking Water to recognize that. And so in a few months, we may have that designation. Many wholesalers who file urban water management plans, which we are now in the category of, also have public water system ID numbers because of,
Dave, this
So,
goes beyond.
yeah.
the
It's a
scope of
question.
The agenda.
So,
But
yeah.
the bottom line is that municipal water has many different meanings depending on the context. There, in terms of regulatory for water quality, in terms of water rights, and in terms of other aspects.
Thank you.
Was not a
Okay.
naive question.
Not at all. I was liking it.
Okay.
Okay, I will bid you all a good evening.
You too.
Thank you, Council. Next item on the agenda is, reports. No, let's see, where am I? Directors meetings. Or trips or whatever conferences you attended. Aqua was in town
Yeah.
this past week.
I,
So-
thank you to the district for sponsoring my first trip. It was quite interesting. I was overwhelmed, to say the least. There were 1,600 people in attendance. And my very first event was a meet and greet with other new board members. And I'll tell you, that was quite encouraging to me personally, to hear that there are other people across the state of California that are in the same way. Confused state that I find myself in, trying to follow the bouncing ball. The most interesting conversations that I had was one with a new board member in San Diego who couldn't understand why CalAm was even considering desal here on the peninsula, because we're not a desert. Because we have desal because we're a desert, but we don't have water supplies, alternative water supplies. The other one was a gentleman from north of Humboldt County who fascinated me because their board not only manages the water, but also fish and game, the marine sanctuary, and all of the other public utilities in their town. There's only 800 people in their town, but they do everything. They're a one-stop shop. I did go to the Region 5, which we're part of, Region 5, all along the Central California coast. And just a note, they're looking for new board members, AQUA members, Dave, that might be interested. They're taking candidacy, also committee members, so looking for that as well. And for anybody that's interested, September 26th, there is a Regional 5 program where they're going to do a tour of the water infrastructure and kind of explain how the water works here on the whole Central Coast of Region 5. Very interested. I'm looking forward to to next year's. I did go to the exhibits and learned way more than I ever thought I needed to know about water meters and irrigation pumps. I thought it was swag, but apparently they were irrigation pumps. But I did enjoy it. It was a great informational. I was a bit overwhelmed. There was so much going on and so much to choose from, and trying to pick and choose the right meeting to go to was quite challenging, but I enjoyed it very much.
Good, good. Anyone else attending?
Yes, I also attended, and I chose to go to one session on Prop 218 process. So it's something I'm not familiar with because it's the first time I'm working in local government. I hadn't done that before. I came on the board of this district. I'd worked for the state and for Federal Court of Appeals, but not local. So there are lots of things like that. And Prop 218 will probably be engaging in some kind of process in the next few years. So I thought it was opportunity for me to learn a little bit about it. Also went to a session on joint power authorities. That is another thing that, you know, at some point might be useful if there's interest in a regional solution to the water supply problems, that is for an area that is larger than our district. You know, it's a solution that addresses seawater intrusion and supply and irrigation needs and other things. It could be that a joint power authority, it would be a way for different entities to get together for a regional project. So it's my chance to learn a little about how that gets done.
I attended the same conference, but I don't know if anyone else did. Well, and I always learn something. And anyway, I was inquiring with other board members, how are they structured and what are the subject matters that they spend their most time on? And just wondering, are we missing something the way we're structured or whatever? And I've had this brief conversation with Dave earlier on this kind of thing. I didn't particularly learn anything that got my attention so much. And so I feel like maybe we're in a good spot. So I'm still processing so much of that information because I took a bunch of notes. And anyway, I thought it was very good. And I like it when they do hold it here. It's easy to make it, and I hope more board members can. And you can pick and choose what you want to get to. They lay it out with lots of options as usual. So anyway, any other comments on anything?
Just on the Aqua conference, I did get to go all day on Wednesday, I think it was. What was it? Whatever, the middle day, the full day. And also attended some of the same panel discussions, but by chance ended up at, I guess it was a keynote speech. And I bring it up today because it was really interesting about what one particular individual, I think he was a wrestler or a fighter or something like that, who went on to an area in Africa that was water deprived, to put it mildly. And it just reminded me something that I think gets lost in all of this conversation is what a natural resource water is and how valuable it is. And it's definitely something that we can very easily take for granted when we, although we have our own water struggles and our water challenges, it is generally available, even when we're under rationing and restrictions in ways that many people around the world just simply don't have access to clean water or any water. And so it was a fascinating pitch he gave, and it really put everything in perspective. So I'll just add that one session that I did by chance. I didn't know. I had a hard time with the actual, we got handed a calendar of events or whatever it was. And I thought it was poorly designed in terms of telling you where you were going and where you should go and where you'd like to go. And so that was challenging, but by chance I ended up at something I would have never chosen, and it was very interesting.
Any other comments on any other activities from the board members?
I'm sorry I
Okay.
didn't get to those. Because I enjoyed those meetings in the past. But I was very- it's fun.
Well, and for the Special District Association have their meetings once a month. And there is a District 5 report every time at one of those meetings. So just make a connection locally. Okay, next item. Thank you for board members for interacting and participating, and we're going to say learn something. It's for me, for sure. Okay, next category, public hearings, item number 16. We're going to get another forecast from
So Mr. Lear, John Lear will be presenting. This is a forward look, 17-month look on water supply conditions. We have an obligation through our own rules to report to you in May whether we foresee any need for rationing or other direct actions related to a shortage. So with that, John.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Riley, members of the board. This is public hearing item number 16. And as Dave stated, it's going to look at projected demand and what we have physically available in our aquifers and our dams, and take a look forward through the end of this water year and all of next water year, and see how the demand and supply stack up against each other. So Sarah, next slide, please. So as Dave stated, we are obligated to look forward, which is called a long-term water supply forecast, and it goes through May of 2025 and to September of 2026, which is the end of the 2026 water year. So it is the combined years of all that. So it is the remainder of the demand that will be needed to meet all of Cal-Am demand. But this is a little bit different look forward, because we're also looking at all of private demand as well on the water system. So we're just looking forward to make sure that the component of the water system that we are going to go and need to supply water is going to be there. We're in a position now a little bit different than when this rule was created, because we have numerous water supply projects now, and we don't rely on the water system as much as we used to. So when Dave and I were discussing this, it is an interesting look at what is in the water system as we are planning on use, which is balancing the supply between what is the naturally occurring water in the system and then the water that is supplied through our water projects. But it also gives us a unique opportunity to look at, should our water systems fail, should something happen, and we need to turn back and ask for a variance of some kind while we're fixing our water systems, is the water in the natural system that can carry us through this time as well. So kind of gives us a kind of a dual look, and then also takes a look at all the other people that are not on the Cal-Am system, just kind of make sure the whole area has enough water should we not receive rainfall and recharge the system next year. So it's kind of worst case scenario, can we get through it? So what we're going to be looking at is the surface water in the Carmel River, its tributaries, and the groundwater that's in the Carmel Valley alluvial system and the groundwater basin. So on our next slide, it has a map of these two areas. Starting in the top of this map, we see the Seaside groundwater basin, kind of kidney shaped, and then moving down Carmel River watershed, which is the dark line, and all the tributaries, and then the blue area in the middle, which is the Carmel Valley alluvial aquifer. And then there is the Los Padres Dam, which is impounding about 1,600 acre feet of water at this point in time. So next slide.
How come it's not blue? Just Los Padres. Is it just too small to not show up here?
It is a little bit if you look at the kind of outline, but what I was just noticing looking at this, I was hoping someone wouldn't point out San Clemente Dam still on the slide. So I'm making a note to myself to fix that.
And it's blue.
But yeah, it does have a little bit. So I will write down, remove San Clemente Dam and make Los Padres blue. Okay. So we can move on. So as I was saying, it considers California American water and all of non-California American water sources and supplies that are going to be needed through this period that we're looking forward. And then what our rule, it's pretty formulaic, and it bases what's termed carryover storage. So it's a snapshot of what we have in our system in storage as of May 1st, 2025. So we compare that, and then we add the demand for the remainder of this year to what we think the demand is next year on the system. And then we compare those two. And as Dave said, that triggers whether we need to go into rationing. And when this rule was written, when these were the only sources to the system, if you were already in a drought and you weren't going to have enough water, or you were close, this would trigger rationing just in case you went into another year of drought. So you wouldn't run into the situation like this, just like this area had in the 70s drought. And so that's kind of how these rules got formed in response to that. So next slide. So it's in storage. It's not what we think we're going to get out of our water supply projects. It's what exists that should our, like I said, should our water supply projects fail, we could turn to this as water that's actually existing in the system. And as I said before, should we be close? The rule had just different thresholds when you compare these two. Should you need to jump into different types of rationing, just in case the worst case scenario would present itself next water year. So next slide, please. So this is the table that tells us where we are right now. So the left column it tells us what areas of the water resources system we're looking at. Moving to the right, this is the maximum that each of those areas can hold. So Los Padres Reservoir can hold 1670. So you can see currently it's holding 1670. In the Upper Carmel Valley aquifer, it's holding 95% of its maximum. Lower is holding 92% of its maximum. And the Seaside Coastal area, where all the water supply wells are, is holding about 51% of its maximum. So when we look at that, we have 29,650 acre feet in storage throughout the entire Monterey Peninsula water system, which is about 89% of the system. So in the next slide, we can compare that to what we think the demand is going to be. So we have the different producers on the far left, which is California American Water, and non-Caliam. We think that Caliam is going to need about 2,401 acre feet out of the resource system. So not total demand, as we saw in Dave's previous presentation. They had produced not quite 5,000 or close to that. So about 50% of their water. So they're still going to need about 5,000 acre feet to meet total demand. Well, 2,400 of it's going to come out of the Monterey Peninsula water resource system through water year. And then about 2,000 is going to come out of it for non-Caliam. And then for next water year, we're going to be looking at close to 5,000 or 4,850 out of the Monterey Peninsula water resources system to meet Caliam demand, and about 3,000 to meet non-Caliam demand. So when we sum those all together, we're going to need 12,243 acre feet out of the Monterey Peninsula water resources system to meet the demand should all of the water resources projects function correctly. We compare that to the 29,650 acre feet in storage, which we saw on the previous slide, and we can see we're well within the amount of storage we need should all the water projects work. Well, should the water projects not work, we would need about 3,000 acre feet for non-Caliam, and we would need about 9,000 acre feet for Caliam. So we can also see too, should we have a failure of the water projects and need to turn to the resource system, we also have the amount of water we need in the resource system. So next slide, please. This is the summary slide, which is what we've shown you forest. We have 29,650 acre feet. We need 12,243. So should the board make the finding that we don't need to go into rationing, we have sufficient water here, we can make that resolution, and we can you can direct staff to complete that resolution and then file that with our rules. And that concludes my presentation.
I have one question, Chair.
Yes, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just wanted some clarification of what is the difference between seaside coastal and the actual seaside basin?
Go ahead, John.
Okay. Sure. Side Basin has four sub areas, which is the coastal, northern, coastal southern, northern inland, and Laguna Seca. The northern coastal area is where all of the Calam production wells are due to various hydrogeologic reasons. The inland northern sub area is former Fort Ord, so it's not developed. So there are no wells out in that area. So it's basically the water in the areas that are not the coastal sub area don't have wells to get to that water. So you would need to build new infrastructure in order to produce that water. So we're just basically counting the amount of water that we could get at with the existing infrastructure.
Okay, so it's untapped without wells, 3,000 acre feet that could be used at some point in the future?
3,000 acre feet is the amount of water that is the
Or, I'm
sustainable.
sorry, 1,540 acre feet. My apologies, I was reading the wrong.
Yeah, you are correct.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
And just for clarification, there is a report on Seaside Groundwater Basin later in the meeting, and there's some maps, and so that can get clarified.
I knew it was a sub area, but I'm just trying to understand it in terms of
Okay.
why it's in carryover storage
Oh.
and.
It's in carryover storage because it has yet, that's the remainder of the sustainable amount that you can pull out of the Seaside Basin for the rest of this water year. So it's based on how much has been pulled out to date, and then the remainder of the sustainable yield of the basin that's left.
That's helpful. Thank you.
So the important takeaway is no ration.
Yes, we got that part. I think we're ready.
No emergency in the near future.
Right.
So through the chair, just to clarify, there's enough water to last through September 2026 and start the new year with an additional full year of reserves.
That's correct. That is the point of the rule, is to do that calculation and bring it forth to the board and present those facts.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Comments? Additions by the GM and I? We can accept this report, and I think that's what.
There's a resolution.
Oh,
You'd want
okay.
to take it out to public
Public
comment first, and then you'd be looking to adopt the resolution.
Okay, are there any public comments?
Chair Riley, I see no raised hands.
Okay, then to the board. So the motion is to receive the report and adopt resolution related to the report, the rationing.
On page 95.
Okay, that's the resolution itself.
Yep, I'm
Oh,
more
okay,
than happy to
all
make a motion to adopt the draft resolution and receive the report and adopt the resolution.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Passes unanimous. All right, thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, board.
Item number 17 is a public hearing also on a new requirement. Kind of interesting.
Long reach of the legislature.
Can I use the music for this? I've seen it 5 times.
When I read it, I thought it said the annual status of vaccines, and I thought, what? Real knowledge.
It does look like vaccines. So good evening, Chair. On that note, good evening, Chair, members of the board. This should be a short item. It's a public hearing on the status of vacancies for the district. That's required as per Government Code 3502, um, which went into effect on January of this year, even though I think the law was passed in September. And thank you to Sarah for volunteering to put together the staff item at short notice. So this public hearing needs to happen before the adoption of the budget. And staff informed the district's labor relations rep about this public hearing. He's aware of this, although I don't believe he's going to attend.
Correct, he's out of town, he's not able to attend.
Got it. So I think we have fulfilled our requirement on that regard. In terms of the report, the district has 26 full-time staff members and one vacancy, which is actively being recruited. This vacancy is in the journal bargaining unit for a water resources TAC 1-2, which was created after the meter program coordinator position got vacant earlier this year. And we expect to fill this vacancy in the coming weeks. There are additional reporting requirements if our vacancies were higher than 20%, but that's not the case. And so that's our short report at this point. That's the report.
And the report is simply just a report on this information.
Exactly.
Okay, report.
That is correct. So the legislature did come out and talk about how the purpose of this law is in public employment. There is a systemic issue of under hirings. And so to prevent burnout and support employees, this was a union-driven legislation that requires you to receive a report and provide an opportunity for labor unions to make their own report to you on vacancies. Obviously, the district here has a very low percentage of open positions, so there is no issue. It's really targeted towards bigger agencies that have much bigger shoes to fill. So with that, yeah, the only recommended action is to receive the report.
After a public hearing.
Okay, yes.
No, I just thought that, I wouldn't say there's no issue. I mean, it could be one area where we're not just hiring that person and the people surrounding that area doing the extra work. But I think what is the total number, 10% or 20%?
20.
That the state is concerned with, and we're not close to that. I just, it's not the percentage, but if there's an area that's never been filled, someone's doing an extra work, I would imagine.
So. Yes, I'm sorry.
Through the chair, so we won't see an organization chart later on this month. with
Next week.
A bunch of boxes talking about vacancies.
Nope.
Because you just declaring that the one right here.
Right.
So I should see one vacant box instead of 2 or 3. I'm just want to make sure so you don't get caught. So, okay,
Yes, absolutely.
all right, thank you. I would like to see an organization chart in the future put in here
With the here.
with the vacancy and make it clear
That's a good point.
to the
yes.
public, Okay, thank you.
Good point.
Good idea.
Okay. Okay, no action required of the board. We will receive the report.
You should take it out to public comment first.
Okay, any public comments?
Chair Riley, I see no raised hands.
Okay, are there any public on it?
Yes,
Okay,
I have them on screen.
oh, all right, hard to read. Okay, there.
Well,
Okay.
if I may through the chair, I will make one comment, which is probably some of you have been in the situation in public employment where there are a lot of vacancies and it can affect the other employees and the whole organization and the public service a lot. So I can understand where, the reason for, the reason behind asking agencies to put that out publicly if they have a certain amount of vacancies.
I've been
Okay,
in
so we
that
close the public comment on that. And go action item number 18, contract with Kennedy Jenks.
Yeah, and I'll take this one. If Maureen's not online, Sarah, can you quickly check if Maureen's a participant? Oh, there we go. She made it.
Yeah.
She was traveling today. Hi, Maureen. Take it
Hi.
away.
All right, well, as Dave mentioned earlier, with the advent of Pure Water Monterey, we have been wholesaling 3,000 acre feet a year to California American Water of indirect potable reuse water. And by state code, that makes us an urban water retailer with responsibility to create what's called a urban water management plan. That urban water management plan goes over the demand, and that will be largely provided from CalAm. It discusses the supplies, and then you look overall at what possible shortages could occur, especially during drought. What is our contingency plan, and what are our demand management measures? Much of the urban water management plan we already have in place, and we do anyways because that's our regulatory role. Regardless, the first urban water management plan for us will be due July 1st of 2026, in a little over 1 year. So I'm pretty sure it was March, we went out and canvassed the various consultants who write urban water management plans for public agencies. We reached out to, I believe I reached out to 11 consultants. We posted our RFQ on our website. Out of the 11 we reached out to, we got 4 responding, and 2 responded from the posting on our website. We shortlisted that group and to 3 consultants. It was a team with water demand, water resources, and our general managers. We interviewed them in mid-April, and the team was unanimously selected Kennedy Jenks. They have been in business for a very long time. They are familiar with our area and have authored a multitude of urban water management plans throughout the state. We found them during the interview to have some great ideas and great guidance just in the short 1-hour interview process. So we're very excited to work with them. The amount, and I apologize, I don't have the staff note printed out in front of me. The amount is in this year's budget. The work would commence after the new fiscal year begins. And are there any questions?
And will the urban water management plan be a plan that that we see again?
Yes, you will not only see it, but you will hear it. And there will be a hearing for adoption. And it's a formally adopted document that then is filed with the Department of Water Resources at the state. And then we'll do it again in 5 years, and then 5 years after that. So it's part of the overall state regulatory framework.
The new requirement.
It's new because of our new position as an urban water provider or wholesaler. The trigger is if you sell water to 3,000 or more customers directly or indirectly. And so indirectly would mean, in our case, through CalAm as a wholesaler. And, we hit that point for the first time in 2021. Conceivably, you could say that we should have filed within a year of that point, but we were still kind of waiting to see what it would look like for a second year of Pure Water Monterey operations. And then, here we are on the regular 5-year cycle, so.
Yes.
I don't know, if this it's neither here nor there, or if it means anything, but it's great to see some evidence of us selling water.
Yeah.
And now it's in a plan.
Exactly.
And they're pumping.
Does this plan have to be updated annually?
Every five
Every
years.
5?
Yeah. And there's going to be some interesting issues because there's a high likelihood of differences between what we say and what Cal-Am says in theirs. The review period likely to be different. You know, will be more along the lines of Marina Coast's model where you put it out there for a month and let people gel their comments. Whereas the last adoption on Cal-Am's plan was it was distributed on a Thursday and adopted the following Thursday. So there was really no public input.
Adopted by Cal-Am. I mean,
Yeah.
their administrative structure was processing.
Yeah.
So, but we will be able to.
Put it out there for a while.
assure
Yeah.
that they're-
But what is the timeline to see this report?
Has to be filed July 1 of 2026. And it's ostensibly for the calendar year, or you're kind of basing it off of the calendar year 2025. So that you've got a 6-month period of review of your 2025 results.
So I'll take it out to the public if there's any public comment.
Chair Riley, I see no raised hands.
Okay, back to the board.
Move approval, staff recommendation to hire Kennedy and Jinx.
Authorize the contract with Kennedy and Jones. Okay, did I hear a second?
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments from board members? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Passes unanimous. Next item is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where is it? Item number 19, our last action item is water master follow-up.
Oh,
Yep, I'll take it. I was just commenting, as the days get longer, it feels like our meeting's getting over sooner, but that's not. what we-
No,
That's not-
Well, there's it.
Don't say that.
So this item was presented pretty much verbatim to the Water Supply Planning Committee earlier this month. This is a follow-up to our discussion as a board a month ago, where the board directed that we go ahead and share with the water master a letter regarding the work that we had the modelers do with respect to the movement of water on the northern frontier of the Seaside Basin, which informed us that leakage was perhaps a misnomer, that no water is swooping up over the hydrologic divide and into the northern boundaries, but it might be going over the political divide, the northern boundary as defined in the court. But that water still then sits there in the basin. It's just the basin boundary and the adjudicated boundary are not the same. And if in fact it's going over the political boundary and pushing its way towards the sea, that's actually a good thing because that's what you want, providing fresh water in opposition to seawater intrusion. So we presented that letter, sent it to all the Water Master board members. Water Master's staff came back with a presentation during a workshop. That presentation was included as a item, as an exhibit to this staff note. And we were a little concerned when we observed the workshop because I think our interests are slightly being misrepresented and, really our concerns for the Seaside groundwater basin are very similar to the Water Master's concerns. So our staff has prepared kind of an overview of how we interact with that basin, a little bit of follow-up. And I guess we will put it to you as a full board, kind of stepping in beyond just water supply planning committee, whether you feel any additional information should be shared with the water master, or any questions to ask them or communication to provide them. So with that, I'll turn to Maureen to share her prepared presentation.
I'll wait for Sarah to grab the slide deck.
Maureen, I don't have it. Are you referring to the one that you use at water supply?
Yes,
I can grab that if you give me a second.
thank you. I apologize. So I'll start with an introduction to fill up some of the dead time. Excuse me, on April 2nd, the Water Master had a board workshop and gave a presentation, which Dave included in your staff note. And the first slide will go, well, it presents 4 bullet points that the Water Master raised regarding the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. And instead of directly addressing those bullet points, I'm going to review MPWMD activities over the year and some data and try to get us on a path looking forward. I have a presentation printed out here, so it would be easy for me to start that.
I'm getting there, just one sec.
No, I'm sorry, Sarah. I apologize. I've been out of town.
Anyway, if you haven't seen it, take a look at the slide on page 147 of our agenda.
She's looking at her presentation.
Yeah, I know, but we
147, you said?
yeah, it's actually funny.
We can move just right on even to the third slide. Actually, I apologize, Sarah. Let's go one more back. So again, the 4 bottom bullets are what was taken from the presentation verbatim, and discounting the risk of seawater intrusion, questioning the importance of achieving protective groundwater elevations, questioning the loss of groundwater from the basin, and questioning the need for or the amount of replenishment water needed to protect the basin. So again, instead of going point by point, I thought it may be more constructive just to provide information on our activities and some data. Next slide, please. So for the past 40 odd years, the district has invested in full-time, professionally licensed geologist and hydrogeologist staff, John Lair, of course, being one of them. We've provided resources to design, install, operate, and maintain monitoring wells. MPWMD has been installing monitoring wells since at least the 1990s. And we have owned over 30 monitoring wells in the Seaside Groundwater Basin. MPWMD is the reporting entity for the California statewide groundwater elevation monitoring system. That's a DWR database that allows DWR to look at water levels all over the state, and it provides a public portal so that the public, who obviously funds it, can also see the groundwater levels. MPWMD monitors an additional 21 monitoring wells that are owned by others. In the monitoring wells, one of the pieces of data we collect are the groundwater levels. We've been doing that for over 45 years in the Seaside Groundwater Basin. Additionally, we've been collecting water quality data. And I've highlighted water quality separately from water levels. Water quality is how seawater intrusion is, it's the metric that's used to define seawater intrusion in the Water Master Basin Management Plan. Also in the 2014 Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, they have to write a plan and report, really a status report. And one of the requirements in the seawater intrusion section is that they report on a water quality parameter called electroconductivity. It's kind of a loose measure of salinity. So statewide water quality data for seawater intrusions, very, very important. Next slide, please. The district has funded, researched, and tested the Aquifer Storage and Recovery Program. Gosh, John Lear, I think it was last week, found a document that went back, I believe, to 1980 as they were investigating the ability to store Carmel River water in the shallow portion of the aquifer. It ended up Joe Oliver identified the deeper Paso Robles, or excuse me, Santa Margarita aquifer, and that is a very productive aquifer. So the ASR program, as we know it, has been in development for about 29 years, including the designing and testing. Every year that we have been in operation and will continue to be in operation, staff collect data and track the movement of ASR water relative to native and pure water Monterey water. Some of that tracking is required by permit. And again, having a number of geologists on staff, they certainly go after tracking that data. We have co-funded development and update of the Seaside Groundwater Basin model, and the budget you'll be receiving this next fiscal year, as in the previous fiscal years. You'll see line items in there for model work with the Seaside Groundwater Water Master. We've participated in 7 Pure Water Monterey tracer studies. So what a tracer study is it's a way of chemically detecting where water is in the groundwater basin. When you're injecting water, you can use the properties of the water quality. Pure Water Monterey water has very different water quality than ASR water. Both ASR and Pure Water Monterey have very different water quality than native groundwater. So you can use what we call intrinsic properties of the water in those tracer studies, and three intrinsic tracer studies were done. The district participated in 2 extrinsic tracer studies, and what that means is something is injected into the well. In our case, it went in with the injected water, and we use dyes. It's a non-toxic dye, not visible to the naked eye, but it can be analytically detected to the parts per billion level. So the district participated in 2 extrinsic and then conducted an additional 2 extrinsic tracer studies for Pure Water Monterey. After the tracer studies, we supported improvement of the groundwater basin model by Monterey One Water to include the new tracer study data. In addition, we included observation data from the 20+ year history of operating ASR, and also the startup and testing of the Pure Water Monterey project. Lastly, on this slide, we fund our own model runs addressing technical questions that we have in-house, in particular looking at the different locations that have been proposed for a replacement well for Seaside Muni, and performing what's called a model boundary sensitivity analysis that Dave was just talking about. Next slide, please. In order to make up for some graphs I'm going to show you in a minute, I provided some photographs. This is Gus Yates. He's a hydrogeologist with Todd Groundwater, who's been studying the Seaside Groundwater Basin for decades. He has several reports published. And what he's doing on the left-hand side is getting that dry dye powder into a bucket so that it can be mixed with water and put into one of the well heads. You see the result on the right-hand side. John and I were outside the fence behind our trucks because that powdered dye got everywhere, as you can see by Gus's Nomex and face mask. Next slide, please. On the left-hand side is John Lear, and I believe that is our hydrologist, Corey Steinmetz. They are mixing in the next round, they're mixing the dye with the water. It was a lot cleaner, but still getting the dye into the wellhead proved to be a challenge. And we've got William Banker Hicks down there assisting and taking pictures behind a electrical cabinet. Next slide, please. So we have also constructed replacement water supply. The ASR sites were completed in 2021 largely. All 4 wells were constructed by 2014. So we've spent about 25 years permitting, constructing, operating, and maintaining the ASR program, in addition to wholly funding and owning the operating ASR injection site. We've also invested funds and staff time to design, permit, and construct the Pure Water Monterey project. Those of you who have been on the board for a while remember that we funded 75% of the upfront costs, in addition to managing construction, testing, and startup of the Pure Water Monterey injection well field in 2020 and 2022. We've also invested funds and staff time, as well as procuring over $14 million in grant funds to design, permit, and construct the expansion project coming later this year. Next slide, please. So with all of that work over the decades, where's the basin right now? Well, Pure Water Monterey injection began in 2020, and the Seaside Groundwater Basin, what's called natural safe yield, was met beginning in 2022. And the natural safe yield is basically how much water you can produce every year from the groundwater basin. And it's really how much native groundwater you're allowed to produce from the groundwater basin without causing harm to the levels. So that was set by the court adjudication order, and it was met beginning in 2022. So it's been not decades, but it's certainly been a couple years since these large changes have occurred. And I'd like to review how the water levels have responded in the coastal sub-area, in particular for the Seaside Groundwater Basin, and a little bit more to the south. And I've organized the next chart from left to right. On your side, I believe, will be from the coastal to the inland, and then a little bit to the south, to show how those levels look in the deeper Santa Margarita aquifer, part of the Seaside Groundwater Basin, where all of the project water is largely injected. Next slide, please, Sarah. So if you look at the 3 charts vertically on the left, these are monitoring wells that are along the coast. And in the 1990s, Joe Oliver, John Lear's predecessor, was identifying the deeper Santa Margarita aquifer as being highly productive. And that meant there was a lot of water in there that could be pumped, and it was also an opportunity to inject. You can see that the groundwater levels significantly decline in the 90s, and certainly that was in part to identifying that it existed, and also in part to the 1995 Carmel River cease and desist order that directed Cal-Am to shift pumping from the Carmel River to the Seaside Groundwater Basin. So the groundwater basin definitely saw a steep decline in levels, and about the mid 2010s, the gradient, the slope of the curve kind of shifted. And we believe that's in large part due to the adjudication, which was issued in 2007. The adjudication called for step downs in production. So it didn't take the pumpers from their current level of production to the natural safe yield in one step. There were a series of steps. And definitely the decline appeared to have ebbed a bit. Lastly, there's definitely a curve shift in the 2020 to 2022 timeframe as the natural safe yield was achieved. And the recent years we're hoping for a change from a negative slope to a positive slope. The two charts in the middle are from monitoring wells that are east of General Jim Moore. And then the two to the furthest right are miscellaneous wells that are largely there to show that different parts of the basin can behave somewhat differently. But overall, we see a shift in the last few years. Next slide, please. So looking forward, the district will continue to monitor the effect of being at natural safe yield. The adjudication also called for a 700 acre foot a year, what we call a payback for 25 years. CalAm has rights to about 1,400 and change acre feet of native water production a year, and they're directed to leave 700 a year in the groundwater basin for a period of 25 years. There will be more water coming this winter with Pure Water Monterey expansion. And just to restate, there are many points of agreements between the organizations.
And Sarah, if you would go back to the blue charts. Just to reinforce Maureen's point, and her point being that the decline was due pretty much to pumping. And then it became steadier when she says we're at natural safe yield. The triennial step downs have now halted. It's gotten to the final step down. And so that happened. And that's what she's saying is that level period. And then the slight increase, which you see just a little bit in the last few years, we think is attributable to a combination of Pure Water Monterey injection, leaving behind an operating reserve, and then the 4,000 acre feet of ASR that's been injected and has not been recovered. So there's just a little bit of influence that you can see from accumulated water and less pumping. You can see we're not back at the starting point of when these monitoring wells first recorded data, but it's a positive direction. So just wanted to reiterate that one.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Is there a plan to present to the water master?
Well,
What's the follow-up?
it's what it's up to the water master. So from you, we're looking for general direction. If you just want to receive this report informationally, that's fine. If you want us to spend any more time with the water master addressing these institutional issues that apparently the district has, we'd be happy to do so. I think that the release of the proposed decision in phase 2 adds a couple of things that we do need to have conversation back with the water master, because as the level of protective water levels is kind of defined loosely as protection for seawater intrusion plus replacement of leakage. But that total amount went up a little bit based on scenario analysis. And one of the scenarios that was analyzed was a series of assumptions requested by CalAm. The district actually did not agree with those assumptions, and we registered that disagreement at the time. But the point I'm making is when the water master loosely adopted 3,600 acre feet per year as a target for protective water levels, which was higher than an earlier discussion based on a previous report from the consultant, that was based on this set of assumptions, as one of the members, John Gagliotti, said, would bookend it's just a bookend. It's, you know, we've got one scenario that said one thing using the district supply and demand forecasts, and then there was another scenario using these other assumptions. Part of those other assumptions included an assumption that pure water Monterey with expansion would only be 4,600 acre feet. And the proposed decision by the PUC says that pure water with the expansion is worth 5,750 acre feet per year. Similarly, the assumptions leading to that 3,600 number at the water master included a devaluing of aquifer storage and recovery, to which the proposed decision says there should be no devaluing, that the long-term average is 1,210 acre feet. So those two numbers change what that bookend over here would look like. So at some point, I think perhaps when a final decision is out, we should reopen that conversation. The water master should reopen that conversation just on those particular issues, because that in and of itself would say the number's probably not 3,600 acre feet per year anymore. Well, what is it? Well, the number was not the result of modeling. It was saying, here were the previous modeling results, and if we change these assumptions, then you would likely see this increased protective water level. So the assumptions have changed per the PUC, which means the target annual amount would change per the water master. And maybe that's a modeling exercise that should be requested, or at least an updating of the way they modified the assumptions and came up with a new outcome. So that's one area of updating that might be useful. The other areas that we've talked about are, there's different numbers if you inject it at the coast versus injecting it up near General Jim Moore Boulevard. And the actual discussion hasn't distinguished between those two. And we don't believe, the district don't believe that there's existing infrastructure currently available to inject any protective water levels, because you would affect the travel times of pure water Monterey. You can't inject drinking water in the pure water Monterey injection wells. They're waste discharge injection under indirect potable reuse regulations. You could use ASR wells to inject potable water for protective water levels, but there's no capacity. So there needs to be an infrastructure plan for how you're going to inject water to achieve protective water levels. So there's a variety of these issues that we still think are outstanding that we'd like to elevate to the discussion. But, you know, as we said, we don't rule the roost. We may have a connection to the water master sitting at this table, but they need to make a decision kind of on their own to receive more information. But we can always send them another letter with more information or two.
Well, let's discuss a little bit.
But
A little
yeah,
bit of follow-up.
we're just looking for general direction.
Okay. Kate, I think your hand's flying around.
I just think there's been a communication breakdown, and I mean, it's almost embarrassing, the level of communication from this presentation. So I don't know. I was part of the very first meeting. I think it might have been my first meeting or second meeting where we suggested sending the letter because it was valuable information, not for me, for certain, not to produce what this presentation clearly produced. So I wouldn't suggest sending another letter. I think the communication's been had. I wonder, as you're talking about the modeling exercises that are needed, the presentation did mention the Groundwater Sustainability Agency and the work that's being done. I wonder if there's a conversation to be had with them as they're doing this sort of monitoring and this research and this studying, whether or not there's just something valuable that could be coming from a third party, just out of curiosity.
I listened to the water supply meeting. I wasn't attending. I mean, I was just listening. Yeah. No, I didn't, this wasn't the workshop. It was the committee structure here.
Our.
Yeah, I just listened to it. And I came up with some thoughts. But I think there was a general request of John Lear to go back to the technical committee and suggest that maybe there's some more conversation we ought to have, but starting at the technical, through the technical committee. And I'm just wondering if maybe Maureen's presentation ought to be literally scheduled or requested to be scheduled. Just to say that, you know, what the district is doing, and can we merge what we're doing with what you're doing in maybe a little more formal way or something or other, or so that there's a little more dialogue about where we might be going on the basin, so that we're not kind of waiting for something else to happen. I think, I just think talking to the board and not relying on the technical committee to get the message. I think we ought to talk to the board and then assume that the technical committee and the board will be kind of getting together ultimately on this. But I think it would be important if we as a district kind of encourage some joint interaction that's specifically on the long-term preservation of the basin. And see, because we don't have the same jurisdiction that the water master has, but we also are one of the major players in how that thing's going to get funded. And I know that's been the discussion, not as a recommendation of any kind, but a discussion that the only funding agency, the only agency that has any potential funding is the district. And I think there's still some work that the water master could be doing that evaluates their own ability to raise money. I don't think they've gone down very far down that road yet. I know they've raised the question, and I know there's some attorney work being done. And I've lost connection with the water master on that, but I just don't know what the outcome has been. And if they just say they are in no position to raise money, then that sets kind of the bar at a pretty ugly level for what they're able to do. But it may kind of refocus on what we may be able to do. Therefore, I think we need to be in the dialogue. That's my reason for saying we should be in the dialogue. And it's going to come down to money ultimately. And I just think the water master ought to make sure it has exhausted its own options about how to create a revenue source for their own needs. It may be small, it may be substantial, it may be nothing. But until we don't go down that road, we think we're talking into the air. We're not talking about a project. Anyway, that's
to sit over there as a director. I look at the district here as a resource, and I like to keep using that resource if we can help them over there. One thing that we've been talking about today is the ratepayers. Who's out there representing the ratepayers? And I look at the situation of the district is representing the ratepayers. You know, we got other cities over there on the board, but I look at the district, the water management district, basically representing those ratepayers, our ratepayers, because the cost. And I like to work with them as much as possible, setting up the road. Because when Cal-Am go to the PUC and ask for money, people are want to know where that money is coming from. It's going to become from the ratepayers. And I want them to be assured that, hey, we looked at everything. We helped plan this. So if the board move forward or a future board move forward, at least they have all the tools, all the evidence why we should do this. So we need to keep coordinating with them as much as possible. Take it or lose it, you know. But then I can sit up here, or a future board member can sit up here and say, hey, we went over everything. Now it's up to us. They take the vote and see which way they want to go. But if we can help plan this, help do what the GM was talking about, hey, you can put the wells here, you can put them there, develop that cost and come up with it. We need to continue to work with them. And I'm not talking about work with them as the adversaries. I'm just talking about planning something out that we can take to the ratepayers and everybody can understand. Work together. Cause going in front of the PUC, we know how that is by now. So I like us to have our stuff together. So that's why I continue to push, work with the water master. I'm not trying to bump heads over there. They see me come over there, they think I'm on bump heads with them. No, I'm not trying to bump heads. I'm trying to get us on the road. Chair Rowley was over there trying to get them on the right road. The GM been talking, trying to get them on the right road.
This is what we got.
Yeah, but it's understandable. But I'm glad we're putting it out there. We're not trying to be adversaries with them. We're trying to work with them. We have a bigger staff than they have over there that really understand the basin. Before the adjudication, it was the district that was doing all this in the basin. ASR. We the first ones out there to push it. Make sure that we have it. We're the first ones to add wells to it, even though we got rid of them and they went someplace else. We are the ones, so,
Well, and just so we don't get lost in the story, I'm not gonna ask the
Right.
mayor to even comment at all, but I just want to make sure that the city of Seaside also has a straw in that pond.
that's right.
And has a significant role to play there. As a city, as an entity, the city.
Right.
Are these entities, the city and the water master and our district, I mean, is there a common understanding what the goals are? I mean, if you're gonna work together, seems like the first step would be to agree on what it is you want to achieve, and I am not clear on if there is such an understanding, and so what it is.
Well, I think that's what the water master is trying to get clear, among themselves. But then I throw this district in the play. We're a big part of that. Because we all represent some of the same cities that on the water master. We represent them. So the same people. So we need to work together as much as possible.
So are we talking about a plan to achieve protected water levels or to build infrastructure to inject
To be,
water that we don't know where it's gonna come
to be discussed, I think. yeah.
To be discussed and, go ahead. Dave.
I'm just wondering, in terms of the question that's being asked of us tonight and what is in front of us, this sounds like some long-term strategic planning
Yeah.
with this agency. And again, I would just suggest that we submitted our letter. We got some really clear feedback and whether that was the intention. And I would, this presentation was fabulous. I learned a lot and have full confidence, watching the presentation that this type of monitoring that is needed is underway. And so, I don't know what we would need to prove, if there's a reason, and it would be important to at this point and at this stage, respond. I don't see that at this point. So I think this was a great presentation and it was very clarifying, and there's clearly some challenges that are ahead that need to be addressed.
I mean, as I understand, there's the one prong, the one suggestion was to have John Laird work through the technical committee to see how the reports, the two competing reports, kind of why are they different?
Yeah.
And then what are the different parameters here that need to be discussed? Because there's some borderline issues that there's some
Absolutely.
disagreement on.
If I could just jump in. Yeah, I don't know if he thinks it was, someone else to speak to that. But you say the two competing concepts is because there are two different entities and they serve two different masters, right? You guys, we have our mandate here and the water master had their mandate. And as of right now, I think the water master's thoughts are that their consultants have a good understanding of what their issues are and how to resolve. Right, and the two don't line up, I understand that, but I don't think it's, I don't think it's the time now, not talking about maybe tonight's meeting, of course not. But I think it'll take a while to figure out how to get them two together.
Yeah.
You know, because again, they come from two, they want to solve this issue from two, well, that's if we agree on what to solve. Right, that makes sense. right?
What's the problem we're trying to solve?
Well, yeah, what is the problem? And then the thing is, where can we work together? That makes sense, right? But that's the strategic goals down the road. And I think it's better to allow the water master to come to some more of his own conclusions about where it's at. Because we are looking at doing a report, doing a study to figure out maybe these numbers are not right, maybe these numbers, well, maybe these numbers need to be adjusted, not meaning that they will agree with what's the district's numbers are. But we are redoing the numbers, studying what our responsibilities are. And I think we need to let them come to their conclusions on what their foundation is and what they perceive to be the answers, and to see if we can meet them with the answers, because like you said, the money's kind of like over here. And then when they ask for that support down the road, then, you know, the two understandings have to get a little closer together, right? If that makes sense. But right now, they're not asking for that, because I don't think they know what their the needs are. And for us to try to get in front of that by telling them what their needs are.
Thank you.
It may not go over well. You know. So I thought tonight's report was excellent. A lot of good background information, and that's definitely a good foundation for us to have when and if they do come around to needing our assistance, right? And there's other things that we can do to strengthen our numbers. That, remember, the third party, there's things that we can do to not go to them as one entity, but as a regional understanding.
Yeah.
Maybe. Right. Because I just say with this, you know, we got a lot of new members, and I need to bring them up to speed on answering their questions and their concerns, and then getting us to agree on what our foundations are.
Yeah, and this is just for discussion
Yeah.
tonight anyway, so there's no action item.
Yeah.
Things will evolve, but I think, Mayor, you're making the point that needs to be made.
Well, I'm glad,
Communication.
I'm glad we're doing this, because it's like looking for the boundaries of what everybody looking at. What boundaries, you know, like I said, I heard it, but I didn't see it. I see it, now everybody know what boundaries they are talking about and what boundaries we are talking about. So,
Well, and the other thing to think about when they get to possible solutions is the consultants have said you need less water if you inject closer to the coast than if you inject further away. And because this water, the potential water, is so expensive, you really need to look at the trade-off between capital costs and cost of water. Because if you can do a lot less water that's expensive water, then maybe you want to invest in capital. And so these are the kinds of things that when the solution gets hammered out, it should be looking at those types of issues, because there are trade-offs between, you know, if you assume that the capacity to inject does not currently exist, which is our position, since our wells are pure water Monterey's wells, then you know, they need to look at what's the delivery mechanism and where is it best used and so forth. And that'll change the volume requirement if it's closer to the coast versus further from the coast. So.
Okay, well, this is a good discussion. I don't know, there are other follow-up ideas. I think we all have follow-up ideas, but maybe it's pretty for a lot of those ideas.
Staff is ecstatic about not writing another letter.
Okay, and we're not talking about another letter. Okay. That's the end of the action items. Are there anything to report on that's not discussed, or a future item they want on the agenda or anything like that? Go ahead. Yeah.
One informational item, it's item 25, the conservation program report. So I noticed that report the a lot of progress is made on closing on the open permit.
Oh,
Mhm.
that
And,
one.
it's an ugly old mess, like, around that staff is working on cleaning up, and it seems like from the numbers presented here, they've made a lot of progress in a short time, so.
Yeah, we were thinking of giving a report back in June, if you're interested. You know, kind of
No, well,
a mid process report. If
well,
if
the
you-
pine cone's putting a match to it.
Keep the work that staff is doing.
Yeah.
Well, and
That's
just,
a fun job.
just so you understand, because you probably all have heard this is 25 years old, or this is 30 years old. When you sign our water permit, it says right above your signature that you will call for an inspection. And if the reason that, our computer has gotten better, our database has gotten better, so we're able to identify these things now more easily than we were. And so now we do a search, it's like, yep, it's 30 years old and there was never a final inspection. But there's no cost, it's just a little bit of time to fix it. And that's what we're doing. It's not big and scary and invasive, but I think that the way people talk out there, it's like, it seems invasive to them.
Yeah, my reaction. Kate, you want?
I just have one example that I got just today. And so I was just wanting to clarify, what is the point? Because this one is from 1997. She's got her fixture count. I don't know if you guys sent that or if she sent that. It has the letter, and she does say that, she did everything in 1997 that she was supposed to do.
Probably, except for schedule the final inspection.
And so you're asking to go count her fixtures again?
Mhm.
And why? Just out of curiosity, what is the goal? What do we want to accomplish? And I'm sorry, I haven't been
Yeah.
following this or seen the pine cone.
Because
I tend to stay away.
And it's not just a district thing. Just think of any government that has a regulatory permitting process. And if you don't close the final condition on the permit, it's an open permit. And if there's an action that should have happened and it hasn't happened, in our case, you file a notice of non-compliance on the deed. It just means you're non-compliant, but it doesn't mean there's a penalty. But folks typically don't like notices of non-compliance on
Right.
their deeds. So our first letter, which is a far more cordial letter
Yeah.
describing the process, said that we're just trying to close this up. And then the second letter says, did you get our first letter? If you didn't, we're going to be compelled to file a notice of non-compliance. It's not going to be the end of the world when you want to sell your home, but it's something that you're probably going to want to clean up when you sell your home.
So my question though, again, I mean, I'm the one who receives the phone calls. Monterey County signed off on the project at that point in time. Normally, had this been done, or is it always the homeowner that additionally has to make a call
Right,
to you?
Right. So if somebody issues an occupancy permit, and I know you're with the county, but one of the faults of the county is they'll do a final inspection for a building permit, and the landscape won't even be in. And we've seen owners then put in landscape that's not compliant with county rules
Mhm.
or our rules. And so even the process can miss something. And in the case of our permit, it's our permit. And so and we've had homeowners say, oh, the county signed off, or the city of Seaside signed off, or the city of Pacific Grove signed off. So therefore, everything's been
Yeah.
complied with. Well, there's not an obligation by the city of Pacific Grove on behalf of the water permit to sign off on that water permit. There's a separate obligation. And so, and it could run to other permits. We're a fairly simple region. We've
Mhm.
complicated it with the water permit. But there's other types of permits that agency has to see through.
So it's just like we're trying to clean up a system.
Yep.
Okay. Not necessary. I mean, I guess as you're cleaning up that system, you may find that someone has added a fixture
And
in 30 years.
they've been, this is like the chance to.
We are cleaning them up.
Here you have it.
So that's,
Ask the mayor if he.
So your report said that, there were some cases where, the permit was amended. I imagine this was situations like that, where something had changed.
And think of it, and I'm sorry, Mayor, I know you have a comment, but think of where we discovered that there was a unlawfully installed fixture.
Mhm.
And the city of Monterey has no water to assign. Well, we said this is the period where we'll take the hit to the district's reserve for that water. So there's no city that's getting tapped for additional water unless this leads to some other circumstances that make it a special case, which
Yeah.
is not the intent. And so the idea was just let us close these permits. And so then our database will be current as of the current year rather than things that we've discovered
Yeah,
that were never finished.
I will try to get this person to comply.
Mayor, well, I just jump in to,
Yeah, yeah.
because I did receive a couple calls of trying to understand this, and I think I had one that was 30 years old, too. But I want to get to, why it's in the district's interest to close these, right? Because you just can't grandfather it in, you just can't go down the list and say, we did an inspection that we didn't actually do,
Right.
right? We don't want to do that. So the resolve is, it's an open permit, put it on the deed, try to get people down here.
Yep.
Right. And so that's why I just want to get out to the public maybe about, there's nothing you can do to overlook it, right? Because they want us to say, hey, it's been 20 years, 30 years, but if you overlook it, we really can't do that. And you don't want it on your deed. You know what I'm saying? We can sit here and put it on deed, no big deal. But 5 years, 10 years later, it's a problem for that homeowner. And so that's really what we need to be saying is there's no way around it because.
There's benefits on both sides.
Benefits.
Just as you've stated, you don't get something filed on your deed and we get it off our books. And yeah, Stephanie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Mr. Mayor, the benefit of responding now is we've got a limited window of time that we are able to take care of these permits using the district reserve allocation and a waiver of fees. And so all of these people should be taking total advantage of this opportunity because it's going to save them money. It will save them a deed restriction that potentially could be enforced in the future. And no, it's just a really great time for them to take advantage of just clearing everything on their property.
Yeah, I understand. I'll be quick. I understand that and I agree with what we're doing. But when you say it like that, that may have been what we should have said in the first letter. The benefit.
It does say that in the first letter.
All the benefits. So, I mean, I haven't seen it. It's just, people call us and they wonder why, something that should have been done 30 years ago. And so the question goes, what difference does it make? And so if you guys are speaking to that, then I understand it.
Well, and I mentioned there's two letters. One is a little lengthier and more cordial and more explanatory. And so some of these, we're not sure when they contact you, if they got the first letter and threw it out. And the second letter says we might file a notice of compliance and then you go. So it's hard for us sometimes to gauge where they are in the process and what they paid attention to or not.
My warrants were there. What happened?
Stephanie, did you hear the question?
District reserves.
No, I can barely hear anybody, so.
Second, oh,
So her question,
Sorry.
what happens if we
what happens if you go
other
to,
fixtures?
I can hear you now.
yeah, I turned my sound on too.
Thank you.
What happens if you go to one of these, go to a house and you find, and you do the inspection and you find there's a bunch of fixtures that weren't permitted, weren't
So-
inspected?
Yeah, great question. If those fixtures are related to the permit, then we're gonna clear it. If they, so we have gone to places where they added another dwelling unit. Like they added a guest house and ADU or whatever that had nothing to do with the original permit. in that case, we turn that over to the city and let them deal with it. But if it's just, they added one little, they added a sink or they didn't put the right dishwasher in, we'll take care of them.
And so for those of you on the Water Demand Committee, you may remember, we said this is going to be a problem because somebody's going to say, hey, that's unfair. They're getting a free illegal fixture. And we said, we know that. And that's part of the price of clearing all this is there's going to be some people getting a free ride for bad behavior.
And there are, but for the most part, it's just, I mean, we have used such a small amount of the district reserve to take care of these things. And it is such a great opportunity for people to clear their properties so they don't have any issues in the future.
Isn't it a little like a library book amnesty?
Yeah.
Keep the book. Yeah,
And you don't have to pay the fine, right?
Exactly.
That's right.
If you take the fixture out.
We are adjourned. I don't know if you need to put one second, I don't know if you need to put another ad or something out there,
Yeah, it's working.
but let these people know. Because after amnesty, it's gonna be something else.
Alvin, we are sending everybody letters.
Well, thank you. Keep doing it because.
I have a suggestion. Future notices to say, okay, we've looked at everything, but you're gonna have to get this signed off. Put it in big letters at the top of the thing. This is your responsibility and we will come for you.
So interestingly, we now actually have the jurisdictions cooperating with us.
Recording stop.